Japan and Australia are looking to forge a closer military alliance with a multi-billion-dollar submarine deal. The first major transfer of Tokyo's military technology to Australia is seen as a step towards perhaps countering China's growing dominance in the region. It comes as Prime Minister Shinzō Abe pushes for greater Japanese involvement in settling international disputes. Well, since coming to power in 2012, the Japanese Prime Minister has taken moves to change his country's post-war pacifist stance step by step. It was in early 2013, for the first time in over a decade, Japan raised its defense budget, this during an island dispute with China. Then in April of that year, Tokyo relaxed its self-imposed ban on arms exports, saying it needs to expand the domestic defense industry. The following month, in a televised address, the Prime Minister said Article 9 of the Constitution, which outlaws war to settle disputes, should be revised. And in late 2013, a 5-year defense plan was adopted, including the purchase of drones and amphibious assault vehicles. RT's Gayane, Chichakyan now taking a closer look at the regional shifts in military power.
After Japan, together with the Nazi Germany, lost in the Second World War, it adopted a constitution which says the Japanese people forever renounce war as a sovereign right of the nation and the threat or use of force as means of settling international disputes. To accomplish the aim of the preceding paragraph, land, sea and air forces as well as other war potential will never be maintained. Throughout these years, though, Japan has maintained armed forces, but strictly for the purpose of self-defense. Well, Japan's current Prime Minister, Shinzō Abe, wants to rewrite that constitution and expand Japan's military power in the region, laying out a vision of Tokyo as a counterweight to China. But without naming any country, Prime Minister Abe offered Japan's help to regional allies, quote, to ensure security of the seas and skies. The Japanese government has already relaxed arms export rules in April. China is in the center of a number of territorial disputes in South China Sea with the Philippines, Vietnam, and in the East China Sea with Japan over Senkaku and Diaoyu Islands. The U.S. is very much embroiled in all of this, claiming that the disputes demand a larger U.S. military presence in Asia-Pacific. 60% of the U.S.'s fleet is there. The U.S. has a large military presence in Australia, Japan, the Philippines, and Guam. And the U.S. doesn't mind its ally, Japan, becoming more militarized.
The United States welcomes Japan's efforts to play a more proactive role in contributing to global and regional peace and stability, including re-examining the interpretation of its constitution.
Chuck Hagel has lashed out at China for what he called destabilizing unilateral actions, asserting its claims in the South China Sea. China hit back.
I personally think this speech by Mr. Hagel is full of hegemony, full of threats and intimidation.
China is accusing the U.S. of using the disputes and exacerbating them to gain a strategic advantage in the region.
If you're in Beijing, as you're looking at this, and what you're seeing is that Japan is piling on along with the United States.
Japan may say that its plan is to secure peace, but critics argue any military expansion would lead to more tensions. In Washington, I'm Chichakyan, RT.
And Prime Minister Shinzō Abe's moves to try and militarize Japan have certainly been met with some very heavy opposition. Let's give you some details here on the program on RT International. The latest polls conducted by Japan's national broadcaster saying that 41% of those are against Tokyo's plans for a constitutional revision, whereas a little more than 30% actually support the idea of greater involvement in international affairs. Well, independent journalist James Corbett, he thinks there are actually some major financial interests at stake.
The Abe government, of course, would put forward the official answer that this is really about maintaining regional security in the context of growing threats, military threats around the region. I think that's the context in which they're framing this. But, of course, the unofficial answer would have a number of different threads to it, the most obvious of which being that there's an a direct economic benefit. Japanese weapons manufacturers will be seeing a great boon as a result of this reinterpretation of the Constitution. And I think that ties into the Abe government's desire for diplomatic rejuvenation and a desire to play a greater role in the Asia-Pacific region generally. But at any rate, it certainly plays well with a nationalist base that has supported Abe and was largely responsible for putting him into power. So we're seeing the re-rise of a Japanese nationalism, which many are now seeing as the beginnings of a wave of increasing Japanese militarism. And there are those here in Japan who are deeply concerned about that as well.